Friday, guys. So, if you made it to this point, you are officially through your first week of online remote learning. So, congrats on that. That also means your teachers made it a full week with a bunch of curriculum, so that's also good, all around. So, here is what I was thinking. I am thinking that it would be helpful if I go through and break down the ATBs for the week. So this is going to be a weekly segment on Fridays that you guys get to watch, and if you still have any follow-up questions, other solutions that I don't mention in the video, that's kind of your assignment for that part of it. So we're going to start with Mondays. I'm going to go through this and probably mix in some Blue's Clues kind of style here of answering. So like answer out loud, because that might help you kind of retain some of these things. So let's get started. I've made my own document camera here out of a cat carrier box from the vet. So, my dry erase is an old t-shirt sleeve. Yay, resourcefulness. So, let's take a look at this. We're going to start with one, obviously. So, Death Valley, one of the driest, most vacant deserts in the world. General rule of thumb that I've taught you guys in the past is simplest is usually better. So, we don't want to make a whole bunch of work for ourselves. We don't want to move large parts or swaths of the sentence around. But rather, there's just one word that you need to insert between Death Valley and one that would help to have the sentence make sense. So, what two-letter word could be inserted between Death Valley and one that would make this a complete sentence? This is your think time, so say it out loud if you know it. Did you say is? That's what I thought I heard. So, I'm going to use my comically large dry erase marker, only one I could find in the house. And this is really interesting to do. Okay. And my handwriting is not going to be the best. Go figure. That looks like a 15. Fail forward, guys. Always. So, I'm just going to pop my head down here, actually. Alright. So, is would go in between that. So, Death Valley is one of the driest, most vacant deserts in the world. Now, there's only one other change to the sentence. It's kind of nice. It's fairly simple. We have two adjectives or descriptors going on in the sentence that must be separated. What two words describe Death Valley that need to be separated, and how do we separate them? Please answer those questions out loud to yourself. Okay, if you identified driest and most vacant, you are correct. Those are our descriptors for Death Valley as a desert, okay? When you have those two things, punctuation-wise, you put a comma in between them to separate them. We've had some experience with this at this point. So, it goes right there. That sentence is done. There were only two things we needed to fix. Now, that being said, in the comment section below, if you had a different way of doing this and were curious if it still worked, I would love to see it, okay? Same goes for any of these. All right, let's hop down to 2. First hint I'm going to give you is that there is a prepositional phrase that also needs a comma to separate it before we continue in the sentence. So where is that prepositional phrase going to need its comma? After decades? That's what I thought I heard. All right, so you put in a comma right here. Decades, of course, suggesting, increments of 10 years, the duration of which this has been going on or being observed. So you do need to pause, though, before you continue to say, okay, what's been going on over the decades, so to speak. So for decades, scientists have noticed rocks which seem to move on its own. All right, so we have a certain word that is constantly in contention or disagreement with how it's used. And so we usually swap it out for a different word. Which is not going to be really the best choice here because it's suggesting a choice, right? We're just trying to be factual with our statement here. So what is the word that we would use instead of which? Say it out loud if you know it. Okay, the word is that. And I know a couple of you, actually many of you, did this in your example, which is lovely, okay? And again, we're just kind of going for that more direct statement here to kind of state what they have been noticing in terms of the rocks, Okay? Now, rocks are inanimate. Rocks don't really have a certain ownership per se. And there's a certain singular kind of suggestion about rocks that doesn't work here. So, rather than saying its own, what would be the better or more correct option there, and why? Okay, well, first off, if you notice, rocks is plural, because it's got that S, right? Its is singular. That's the biggest issue here, and that's why it's in disagreement, okay? If you said rock, this could make sense. You'd have to do some shifting. But rather than saying its, we just say their. You're still kind of getting that sense of self-possessiveness, okay? But it's then in agreement with kind of the number of things you're talking about, okay? And that's kind of that sentence. Again, other solutions, I want to see them. Number 3, what does the underlined phrase mean? In spring, rocks appear to have scribbled parallel lines across the land. Now, ask yourself this question. Can rocks scribble similar to what I'm doing on the ATB right now? Can they do that on their own? I hope you said no. But this is a good example, kind of a personification in an indirect way. That's not necessarily what they're trying to get you to say it means, but rather it's just this idea that the rocks are kind of leaving behind these tracks on their own, okay? So that's kind of the simplest explanation. And that's likely because if you think of the desert climate, marks or, forgot the other word I said. That's fine, trails. Mostly because in the desert climate, it's probably pretty windy, so it's not that things stay stationary, right? Okay, and then we come down to here. Now, 4 is tricky because there's a number of different ways you can do it. I'm going to write out what the ATB people suggest. Okay, back at number 4. I like this problem because with the research note, just the pieces of information, you have to kind of figure out what parts of speech need to be represented, but also there's a couple different ways you can do it. This is the solution that they came up with. Scientists now know that rocks were sitting on thin ice sheets and were blown by light winds. You don't have to include explanation, which is kind of nice. But you notice that they put somebody, some kind of agent or noun of the action. We've been talking about scientists in previous sentence, like examples, so like why not make them the subject here, okay? And then you're just incorporating kind of those pieces of information. They chose to do it in order of the research note, and I think that's a good strategy to not overcomplicate some things. So something to consider with this. That being said, that's the end of this video for Monday's ATB. Please post in the discussion what is one thing that you did differently than what I have up here. So pick one of these sentences and offer me up your different idea. Thanks so much.